When revelation came to Mo, he said, kill them wherever you find them. But non Muslim politicians claim to know that he really just meant to remind them to give people hugs and be a lovable lug. Jihad terrorists? Never mind them. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. This week in Jihad is embarked. We are here with the great David Wood. And David, there's been jihad happening.
Really? Where's that?
Well, we've had some major jihad just in the last couple of days. Some of the world's most foremost jihad leaders have been killed. So this is a big week for jihad in terms of setbacks that Allah has allowed them to suffer. First, we had Fuad Shukr, who was the mastermind of the bombing of the playground that killed 12 Druze children in northern Israel. And he was also the mastermind, many years ago, of the attack on the Marine barracks, the U.S. Marine barracks in Beirut, and killed 241 American service personnel. And so he was wanted with a $5 million bounty on his head. He was taken out by the Israelis the other day, and then this was followed by the death of Ismail Haniyeh, the top dog of Hamas. So why do you think, David? I mean, I thought that if you obeyed Allah, then he would bring you victory in this world and the next.
Yeah, I was wondering that the other day too, Robert. Matter of fact, I think I was posting about that last night on Twitter, like serious question, like, okay, so you're a Muslim and you read the Muslim sources and you see what Allah says about the Jews and Muslims fighting the Jews and so on, and yet you just keep getting crushed over and over and over again. I mean, over and over. And then you're all happy when you get to kill a few and stuff like that, but you're just getting crushed. And it's like, does there ever come a point where you think maybe God just isn't helping me against the Jews? Like, does there ever come a point? Because you can always, they can always think, oh well, he's just testing us for now. He wants us to keep at it. But like, does that just go on forever? I mean, if you lose 10,000 battles in a row, I mean, keep in mind, these are the same people who say, hey, we won the Battle of Badr. This proves that God is on our side. And then later, when it was the Battle of Uhud and they lose, then it was, oh, we only lost, but it's because Allah was punishing us because of this thing. Okay, so why is Allah punishing you now over and over and over and over again? And why do you think that he's going to give you victory over the Jews if he's constantly punishing you at the hands of Jews? So anyway,
Yeah.
it's just weird situations. And that's one thing I thought was weird in this whole situation. The other thing was, you saw like the Iranian leaders like, oh, what a horrible violation of our sovereignty. We're going to punish Israel for this. So one, good luck with that. But two, we can't believe these are the guys who are death to Israel, death to Israel. And they got crowds of tens of thousands of people, death to Israel, death to Israel, death to Israel. It's just like, it's crazy. Like, oh, we're going to completely exterminate that entire group, that entire country. But respect us as much as possible. If we have a terrorist leader in our midst, don't do anything. Don't take him out because we have to respect each other. Death to Israel, death to Israel, death to Israel. It's like insane. It's wait a minute. You're like defining your existence as pretty much completely obsessed with extermination of the nation of Israel. And then you're like, oh, but be very nice to us in response. It's the same thing we gotten for 14 centuries. We're going to heap insults and abuse and subjugate you, Jews and Christians. That's what we're going to do. But make sure you respect our prophet and our book in return. Just nothing but the utmost respect. No. The answer is no.
Yeah, did you notice? I actually did not have this queued up. I didn't plan to talk about it. But since you mentioned these things, I think it's worth noting that Ayatollah Khamenei did exactly that this morning after the news broke. He says, it is our duty, following this bitter tragic event, which has taken place within the borders of the Islamic Republic, it is our duty to take revenge. And I read that this morning. I thought, wait a minute. This only happened because of the war footing you've been on against Israel all this time, the genocidal bellicosity, the multiple predictions, Israel will be gone within 25 years, and every time they do this, every time somebody fights back, they act like it's a gratuitous attack. This is actually the mythology of the Crusades that they've put over on the West. That the West thinks that the Crusades were this proto-imperialist venture into the peaceful Muslim lands where they were just picking flowers and skipping through the fields. And they completely forget about 450 years of jihad. And it's always presented as gratuitous. When I was writing the history of jihad, I was reading the contemporary Islamic literature, that is, the Islamic literature from the time of the Crusades, and they were acting just like this Khamenei is now. These people just came upon us for nothing. We did nothing. Yeah, well, there are 1,000 churches we destroyed, and we took over half of the Byzantine Empire, but why are they coming and bothering us? We were just picking flowers.
Yeah, and here you and that trend has continued down to this day. And you saw it with Muhammad, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the polytheists say, "Hey, you can't take the pilgrimage to Mecca because we don't trust you anymore because you're talking about killing us and so on," then shame on them for being so intolerant. And then if Muhammad takes it over, the first thing hey, no more of anyone is allowed here at this at the Kaaba. No one gets to take the pilgrimage but us. Anyway, like complete hypocrisy. But as far as this, we attack you, but when you respond, we'll keep attacking you until you eventually respond, and then we claim to be victims. Look, you're oppressing us. Mm-hmm. That continues to this day. I mean, look at the Dawa guys. Yes, as soon as we get to power, we're going to kill you. We're going to behead the apostates. We're going to kill the blasphemers. We're going to get you over. We're going to subjugate you. We're going to take your wives as a war booty. And you say, no, don't do that. We'll expose your prophet so people won't take this seriously. Oh, my goodness, look at the Islamophobia. Will the Islamophobia never end? They're attacking us. Ah!
Yeah. Well, they know how to play the game, those guys, because they know that stuff works with non-Muslim officials. And so, they love to do it. I got to ask, though, people are asking in the comments, where's the poem? I don't understand. Did the poem not come through? Did the feed not start until after the poem? Look, the poem.
Yeah, there was a delay when I clicked on it. It looked like it cut in when we were saying something afterwards. But that was me. If other people are saying it, you might just have to repeat it to be on the safe side, Robert, because that was a banger. That was a banger.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not.
They call that a banger.
Not exactly T.S. Eliot here, ladies and gentlemen, or Muhammad, but
T.S. Yeah.
Anyway.
You need to compile these and compare them, and we'll just compare them with the Quran.
Yes, well, nobody can make one like it. That's the thing. That's one thing I do know. That try as they might, I challenge any of the Dawagandists, any Muslim listening, write a poem like this. And then I will admit that you indeed are a prophet like Muhammad. When revelation came to Mo, he said, kill them wherever you find them. But non-Muslim politicians claim to know that he really meant just to remind them to give people hugs and be a lovable lug. Jihad terrorists, never mind them. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Twice today, you get double the money. Double the poems for the money, that is.
That's like 500 times better than anything in the Quran. I bear witness. Muslims, keep in mind, following the stupid, insane logic of your own fake prophet, you now have to declare that Robert Spencer is a true prophet until you produce something like it. Only catch is, I'm going to judge the contest. Just like you guys think you get to judge the contest when someone brings a surah like it. So I get to judge the contest. You have to bring something like it or believe that he's a prophet. And that shouldn't surprise you since he literally wrote the Quran.
Yeah, so it makes sense. Also, there was something else in this regard about, I think we're just going to have to get back to that later. Anyway, the other big thing is we've talked a lot about England over the years, about Britain in general, about its Islamization. Something happening here I should know about?
No, just Swiss apologetics threw me off and said Muhammad was a prophet like George Washington.
Yeah, just a little shout out to our friend Craig Considine there.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about putting him in the poem. I was going to have it... Craig Considine claims to know he really, but I thought that's enough Craig Considine. I don't want to make him the star of every show here, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't know, by the way, to our viewing audience tonight, Craig Considine is an Islamic apologist. He's written about how wonderful and peaceful Muhammad was, and he's having second thoughts now, not about his writings about Muhammad, but about his association with the Muslim Brotherhood. David and I did a show last night on David's channel on that you might want to check out if you have not yet done so. Anyway, the Islamization of Britain has been a long time preoccupation here. We have spoken about it many times because there's just so much information about the jihad advancing in Britain and the supine response of British authorities and so on. And so I come to this fellow here who's getting impatient. And where is he? There he is. Yasser al-Habib. And he is raising money to buy an island. He's got the money. I mean, he's got the... he's already got over £3 million.
Must be nice.
Yeah. And he's raising the money. He's also got a private army, according to reports. And the idea is that he's going to buy an island. He's raised the equivalent of $3,850,000, and he's going to create this Shiite state with Islamic law, the whole deal, on this island in Scotland, this tiny private island that is up for sale, Torsa. And I just saw not long before the program that the Reverend Calvin Robinson in Britain is now trying to raise money to beat his bid for Torsa and make it into make it a Christian island.
Oh man, if you own that island, you're like, oh, the entire Christian community versus the entire Ummah going to be bidding on this. What?
Yeah, the crusade on Torsa. But there he is. He's getting itchy for Sharia in Britain. He's just going to get it started himself on Torsa, and he will spread it from there to the rest of the country. Of course, that would be easy because the way Britain is, there's not going to be much resistance.
Well,
yes.
By the way, I mean, I don't know that guy in particular, but I know enough about the Dawa guys and the Muslim scholars in general to think, my goodness, this is going to make Epstein Island look like a joke. These guys, all these Dawa guys running around defending sex with 4 and 5-year-olds and stuff like this. And at the end of the day, when they have the opportunity, they'll say, "No, we don't believe in muta," but yeah, you do. That's in your sources. You believe it when it's convenient, because you have both. You have both even in the Sunni sources. You'll have some passages saying that Muhammad allowed muta, and it was a later caliph who abolished it, and then you'll have no, Muhammad abolished it. And it's interesting that Joshua Little Guy, when he's blasting away at the hadiths, he explains this, saying that back in the day, Islam was regional, and some believed that it was okay, and some believed that it wasn't. And then when they tried to come up with like a pan-Islamic, same Islam everywhere, that's when they started they all get in this like war of trying to trace their teachings back to Muhammad. And it's basically those who didn't like muta, they said, hey, Muhammad condemned muta, and those who wanted to still, keep it as a practice and so on. No, it was a later guy. That was a later guy who did that, so on. And so you find both that are sahih in Islam's most trusted sources, completely contradicting each other, and Muslims believe in them for some reason, believe in them all. Anyway, the point is, if someone wants to practice muta, you just look and say, okay, here's a bunch of passages saying, no, it was a later Muslim ruler who forbade the practice. You can't overrule Muhammad. Anyway, long story short, keep your kids away from that island, people. I don't care how much, let's send your daughters out here for a retreat. Do not do it. They're planning on banging your daughters.
Well, because this is going to be a Shiite island. And so I don't know if Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawa and all those guys, I don't think they're going to go for it. But they'll definitely have muta because the Shiites say it's fine. And speaking of differing traditions that contradict each other, that are all through the Islamic sources about every bit of Muhammad's life. That's what you'll find in Muhammad, A Critical Biography. Is so much interest in this book, ladies and gentlemen. It's been moved up 2 months to September 10th. It was originally supposed to come out a month and a half, at the end of October, and then the beginning of October, and now September 10th. So pre-order now. It's coming soon. David and I are going to have a cage match about it. Anyway, also in England, we have our old friend Anjem Chowdhury.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. Well, Anjem we won't be hearing from for a while because he has been sentenced to 28 years in prison,
No,
which
28 years of prison dawa.
that's right, yes. 28 years in prison for belonging to a banned terrorist organization, Al Muhajirun. And it's kind of ironic because Mr. Justice Wall, and I bet talking to him is like talking, well, you get the idea. Mr. Justice Wall said to Chowdhury that your views are entrenched, your views are entrenched and abhorrent to most right thinking people. And you will continue to spread your message of hate and division, if allowed to. And I thought, okay, but he's going to be spreading his message of
You
hate
darn
and
right. It'd
division
probably even be
in
more
prison.
effective. Yeah.
Yes, he's going to be this prison guru. All the Muslims will flock to him as their leader. He'll make lots of converts. He'll teach Sharia. He'll teach Jihad. He's got it made. 28 years. It is likely a life sentence because he's in his mid 50s. Unless he gets out much earlier, but he's going to do a lot more damage in prison than he probably would have outside.
Absolutely. So I've actually heard from people over there. I mean, we've heard the stories about prisons over the years and stuff like that, but I heard from people what it's actually like. And it's basically a young guy gets locked up for, stealing something or something like that, goes to prison. He goes to sit down in the cafeteria, and a group of about 10 Muslims roll up on him, say, "Hey, are you a Muslim?" And he says, "No." And he says, "Okay, you need to recite this, and then you're okay." And they tell him to recite the Shahada. And if he doesn't, they start beating the brakes off him on a regular basis until he converts to Islam. And then, of course, once you convert to Islam, you're surrounded by a bunch of prison guys who are prison Muslims who are preparing for jihad. And it's a very dangerous environment. I'm not talking about for that person. I'm talking about for society. It's a dangerous environment for the spread of Islam because you already got people who aren't scared to commit crimes. In other words, you're not talking about a bunch of little goody two shoes here. You're talking about some people who've done some stuff in their life. It's an environment where people are very frequently hostile towards police, hostile towards the government, and so on. And so you start coming and preaching, "Hey, you really want to stick it to the government and to the police? Just let's start planning right now." And so, yeah, you've got Anjem Chowdhury in there, and he's going to be he's going to be a hero in there, and he's going to be educating people for a long time. He's going to be running the show as far as guys going out and forcing people to convert and so on, and then radicalizing them and sending them out as jihadis. What's crazy is if politicians had the slightest bit of common sense, they could deal with this instantly. It's just, okay, we understand there's a problem here. So we keep Muslims separated from non-Muslims, and we keep radical Muslims separated from regular, ordinary Muslims who don't take their religion very seriously. We keep them all separated. We keep them in different spots so that because as it is now, they're all together, and the radical Muslims are going to radicalize the Muslims who didn't care a lot, and together they're going to forcibly convert and radicalize everyone else. You could deal with that in a heartbeat instantly by keeping them separated. Here's your prison over here. Here's your wing of the prison over here. There's your spot. If you're not a Muslim, we keep you separated. But to do that, they would have to acknowledge there's a problem with Islam, and they just won't do it. So they would rather have someone like Anjem Chowdhury just raising a generation to conquer and subjugate Europeans. They'd rather have that than to acknowledge that there's a problem. It's the same thing. It was the exact same story with the grooming gangs. You could deal with that problem, but to deal with it, you have to acknowledge there's a problem. You don't want to. So you just ignore it. You just ignore it and say, let it keep going. We'll let the next generation deal with that.
Yeah, if there is one. If there's a free Britain after all this. Maybe, of course, then there's got this guy's private island, and who knows what's going to happen with that, but they might not be able to count on another generation at this point. So many, it's interesting to note also that people still dismiss the British population, the Muslim population in Britain, as a small minority, but they don't take into account the fact that they have a disproportionate share of the political power. That there's that long list that you've probably seen of all the various cities and towns in Britain where the mayor is a Muslim. And this is because, and this has never been acknowledged in the West, when you have mass Muslim migration into a country, they immediately seek political power. And it's the same in the United States. There's a concerted effort to get Muslims into Congress and the Senate. With every election, there will be more. And the whole idea is to get into positions of power and responsibility and then begin to introduce laws and legislation that is more friendly to Sharia.
And all that is basically preparing the way for the takeover. And so that's what Anjum's going to be busy doing for you, getting your army together. Anjum's going to be preparing the army for the future caliphate.
Yeah.
Nothing to
And
worry about there.
being paid for by the British state as he does it. It's, uh, it's just incredible to me, David. And they never get they never get a clue.
I have to say, more people are getting it now. And Robert,
Yes.
have we had to check if you go back to 2005, 2006, when we were saying exactly what would happen? I mean, exactly. And everyone back then, Muslims, atheists, Christians, everyone said, no, you're wrong. You're just Islamophobes for thinking this is going to happen. Now it's happening. Have we been wrong about one thing we said was going to happen?
Not a single thing.
No, and everyone who said we were wrong, they were all wrong.
Yeah.
And you wonder, what does it take for the rest of you to realize that you were completely wrong and we were completely right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just like, you get high enough in the political power game and you just keep falling up. Like, you take a guy like John Kerry. He's just the opposite. He's been wrong about everything. He was wrong about making an accord with the Islamic Republic of Iran. He was wrong about making accord with the Palestinians. He doesn't know anything about jihad. He dismisses it altogether. And he just keeps getting new government jobs, promotions, was a presidential candidate, everything, and it's nice work if you can get it.
Yeah, and the other problem with the politicians is if it's a heavily Muslim area, well, as you pointed out, they're going to get Muslim politicians representing them. If it's someone from a different area, they're not familiar. They can ignore the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're living in your rich area with your own private security and all this stuff, you don't have to deal with the problem that everyone else is dealing with the grooming gangs and all this stuff. So what do I care? As long as I've got my job safe and sound.
They don't even see it. They
Nope.
might not even know it's happening or know what it's really like, to have to live in an area where you have an increasing number of people who think that you're the most vile of created beings. All right, did you see this? This is Birmingham Cathedral in the UK. And you see that you can see the cathedral altar back in the back, the altar rail, and then the altar behind it, but it's covered up with signs, and they've covered over the Christian art, and they're having a fashion show. Now, this
Nice.
kind of thing is common for Anglican churches. They do this, they like to do this kind of thing. I guess they think it makes their churches relevant or something, that they have things like this in the church. And so they had this fashion show, and this Muslim designer, Amal Osman, uh, put in a bridal niqab. And there it is, the bridal niqab. And people were watching the fashion show. You can see them on both sides. The bridal niqab, she walked down the aisle, the lady wearing this, and it was just like anybody else who was modeling clothes in this show. And I thought, well, this is kind of symbolic, David. You have a church where they probably don't believe really very much in Christianity anymore, and nature abhors a vacuum. They're starting to fill it with something else.
That's the exact same thing with the country in general.
Yep,
Same thing. Same thing going on.
absolutely. It's amazing how quickly it happens that you have a generation or two and they forget what Christianity is all about entirely and are completely vulnerable to dawah.
I have to say, though, in all fairness, that white niqab is way better looking than the black version,
So,
or even the blue burqa version that we see in a lot of pictures and stuff like that does look cooler. So, yeah, ladies, if you got to wear something like this on your wedding night, wedding day, whatever, yeah, go with that one. That's a good one.
I wonder if you're allowed to wear a white one out on the streets.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing, because I mean, you'd think if this is perfectly acceptable, I'm not familiar. There's got to be a rule somewhere that says it has to be black or blue or something like that.
There
Because
must be.
you
Yeah.
would assume you would see a lot more colors in those.
I would expect that a brightly colored one would be considered to be a violation of Quran 2431 about drawing attention to yourself and to your adornments and so
Well, they
on.
do that anyway. You see the ladies with the hijab on, but they're decked out in makeup and stuff like that. So
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Or the hijab and the tight jeans.
Hmm. I had
Anyway,
a
yeah.
we're in DC once, and we were near a mosque, and all the Muslims were going to the mosque, and there was a young Muslima there walking in, and she had her hijab on, but her shirt said "brains with booty." Huh, that's cool.
Okay. Whatever you say. This is a house in Brighton Beach, in Brooklyn, New York City, and they were flying the Taliban flag, which is the Shahada flag, but that's the particular version that the Taliban uses actually as its national flag in ruling Afghanistan, and then the flag of Palestine. And some people noticed this past week and were criticized. The councilwoman Inna Vernikov of Brooklyn posted a video showing herself outside the home, and she says, "We have the worst terrorist supporters living among us." And the guy who lives in the house said, "Wait a minute, that's the Taliban flag? You gotta be kidding me. I didn't know that." He says he just thought it was saying there's no God but Allah. He says, "We're normal, average New Yorkers. We're not behind any agency or any agenda. Nothing like that." What do you think, David?
Well, so you're supporting both the Taliban and Hamas. Oopsie, didn't know.
You didn't know.
Well, why didn't you have a big peace flag if you don't know what any of this stuff means?
Yeah, you got to. It's a good question.
Oopsie.
Also, why is it that you pick the Shahada flag? Why is it that every Shahada flag is that of a terror group, with the exception offhand of the flag of Saudi Arabia? And Saudi Arabia, of course, is the chief sponsor, or was up until recently, the chief sponsor of Wahhabi Islam, which gave rise to a lot of terror groups. It's an interesting connection.
One of life's great mysteries.
Yeah. Speaking of great mysteries,
We may never understand, Robert. We may never understand.
and we may never understand, David, because there are so many people that don't want us to understand. This is Kamala Harris. I think that's it. Kamala Harris speaking at the
I've
Islamic.
heard it both ways.
Yeah.
That's
She
another
says.
thing the world may never know.
Well, there's one way you're supposed to say it, and the other way is racist, but I forget which is which. Anyway, the Islamic Center of Southern California. She's speaking there. There's another. I don't know if it's a Shahada flag. I can't quite make it out, but you can see the green flag there over to her right, on the left on the screen. And Kamala is speaking. I don't know the date of this video. I don't think it's recent because she seems to. It's not a very clear picture, but I think she looks a little younger than she is now. But this video surfaced this week, and she says in it, "We must have the courage to object when they use that term, radical Islamic terrorism." It takes a lot of courage to object to that, am I right?
Oh yeah, yeah. You just instantly be praised
Yep.
by everyone.
She
I
went
mean,
on.
oh,
Yeah.
I wanted to point out that was one of the things Craig Considine of all people called her out for. He said, "Yeah, I used to think the same thing too, but it's time to realize you're not. There are actual people who need to be protected, and you focusing on words is not going to help them." If Craig Considine is saying that you're too weak and soft and cowardly, my goodness.
Yeah, I love this guy, Craig Considine. He's really got it all together. Craig, remember, you're always welcome right here on the Jihad Watch video channel. You can even, we'll come in and chat with both of us. It'll be great.
Can,
Anyway,
can you
yeah,
imagine, Robert? If I had told you, I'm talking 2 weeks ago. If I told you 2 weeks ago, we'd be sitting here going, "Wow, what a breath of fresh air this Craig Considine is." What a beacon of light in this dark world.
It just is. It's the kind of thing keeps me going, David. Keeps it all interesting. Who's going to be next? Jihad Ali? Who knows? Could be any of them.
Someone.
Yep. Anyway, she went on to say that this was because Muslims were the greatest victims of terror. David, does the fact that Muslims are the greatest victims of terror mean that there is no radical Islamic terrorism?
I'd have to say, Robert, just for point of clarification, if Muslims are the greatest victims of terror, who are the main terrorizers of these Muslims?
Radical Islamic terrorists.
Oh wait, you can't say that, Robert. So you can't say which Muslims are committing acts of terror against other Muslims. You can't say it. You can't say. So keep in mind, I'm fine with this. If you want to just say Muslims when they're radical and they're terrorizing other Muslims, and you want to say, well, you can't call them radical Muslim terrorists or something like this because they're going after other Muslims. If you want to say that, fine. Then what do we just call them? Muslims? And here's where they'll jump in and say, no, you don't call them Muslims at all. Why? Because they're going after fellow Muslims. Hold on. Muhammad himself said, Surah 9, verse 73, said that Allah has sent him to wage jihad not only against unbelievers, but against hypocrites, Muslims who are doing it wrong. You're not following it the way you're supposed to. Now, when Muslim terrorists kill other Muslims, are they killing other Muslims that they believe are Muslims in good standing and on the right path? No, they're killing Muslims they regard as hypocrites, exactly as they're commanded in the Quran.
Precisely. That's
and
it.
somehow we live in this weird world where if you actually obey the Quran to the letter, it means you're not a Muslim.
Yeah, and also if you act upon what the Quran to the letter says, then you immediately lose your identity as a Muslim.
What a real religion.
It's a wild religion because you could live as a Muslim all your life. And you read about waging jihad against infidels all the time in the Quran. And then if you decide to go do it, then suddenly you're not a Muslim anymore. You're an Islamist, maybe.
Fortunately, on the positive side here, if waging acts of terror and fighting other Muslims and so on, if that makes you not a Muslim, so if terrorism makes you not a Muslim, Muhammad was the guy who said that he's been made victorious with terror, so he wouldn't be a Muslim. Abu Bakr fought wars. He actually fought wars against other Muslims. So some of the Muslims left Islam, but some of them just said, we're not paying you zakat. We'll pay zakat in our own way. We still believe in Islam. He said, if you don't pay me the same way you paid Muhammad, I'm coming to kill you. He fought them too. So he's fighting Muslims that he believed were not following Islam correctly. Put them in the apostate category too. So Abu Bakr was doing the exact same thing that Kamala Harris says makes you not a Muslim. So Muhammad's not a Muslim. Abu Bakr's not a Muslim. The early generations of Muslims, they were all fighting. Sunnis and Shias and stuff, they're all fighting. So none of these guys are Muslims. For you don't have Muslim. When do you actually get to Muslims? 20th century, 21st century? When, Kamala? When do you actually get Muslims who are actually Muslims according to your definition?
Never, because they're always fighting each other.
Weird.
And they've been fighting each other throughout history.
But if we just don't have a label for them, Robert, that will solve the problem.
Yes. And also, I agree with her, in fact, David, that we shouldn't use the term radical Islamic terrorism because it's not really radical. It's really quite mainstream.
That is
and
correct.
Deeply embedded in the texts. Mm-hmm. So
I would have to say, I suggested this years ago because they say Muslim when they mean just an ordinary Muslim, but who's not following the commands to wage jihad and stuff. And they just call that Muslim. And then if you're actually looking and saying, wait, Muhammad says I'm supposed to fight those who do not believe. All right, I better fight those who do not believe. Then you're a radical. So you got regular Muslims who aren't obeying Allah's commands. And then you got the radical Muslims. Whereas I pointed out years ago, it's like, you should switch those. It should be just Muslims and then sort of like Islam light or something like that.
Yeah.
Like Islam light. So it's Islam-ish, Muslim-ish, but not real authentic. So something along those lines.
Sugar-free.
Yeah, sugar-free Islam.
Yes. All right. We also have striking terror in the hearts of the infidels jihad stories this week. We have a couple that are quite similar, but the same Islamic principle is behind both. In Mali, the jihadis made a raid on farmlands in Dembo village and killed 26 villagers as they were working in their farmlands. Meanwhile, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Allied Democratic Forces, which is an ISIS group, Islamic State group, they made a raid on the town of Oicha in Beni territory and came upon people working in their fields, and killed 17 people, beheading many of them. So here we have strike terror in the hearts of the enemies of Allah, do we not?
Over and over again on a daily basis, and these are the things people never hear about. If they
Yes.
put it this way, if they don't hear about it from you, they're not hearing it.
And this is the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Let me repeat that sometimes people I see in the YouTube comments say, where can I find the sources for all these stories? Well, they're all at jihadwatch.org, and they are all sourced with links to the original at jihadwatch.org with commentary added as necessary. The whole idea is to make up for what the media doesn't want to tell you, or what people like Kamala Harris would rather that you did not talk about because it just doesn't fit their paradigm. Another story in a similar vein, although there's no violence, out of Indonesia at Thessalonica Church in Kampung Melayu Timur Teluk Naga district in Tangerang.
Hey, you crushed that.
Thank you very much,
You nailed
ladies
that
and
one.
gentlemen. That was fun, too. I'm almost tempted to do it again. Let's see, that was Kampung Melayu Timur Teluk Naga district in Tangerang. And they have this church, Thessalonica Church, and it was stopped. The church's worship was stopped because the Muslim residents said, hey, this is a majority Muslim community, so you can't have Christian prayers here. You can't have Christian church here. What is that all about? They must be extremists, right?
Yeah, they must be. Where would they get an idea like that? They
Well,
just
where
make it up?
indeed? Where indeed, David? What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. You might think it has something to do with all these claims about all religion being all for Allah and so on. And I've been commanded to fight people until they say there's no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his messenger and so on. But I don't know. You can't apply those things because, as we know, only non-Muslims actually take that stuff seriously.
Yes, that's right. But anyway, yeah, that is the idea that Islamic law actually forbids Christians to build new churches or to repair old ones. And it's often a flashpoint in Indonesia that if Christians start to pray in a place or build a church, then they often get protests with a mob coming to complain that they are transgressing against the laws of Islam. And hey, David, I do have a comment here I think that we should address. Oops. Hang on. Here we go. Look at that. What do you think? Mr. David, not really Hank Aaron, I think Hank is no longer with us, says, Mr. David has corrupted Mr. Robert, no more ties. I did want to just say, ladies and gentlemen, I have unfortunately suffered an injury which makes it impossible for me to tie a tie. I've injured my hand.
Yeah.
And the ties will be back.
I have to say I'm not. But there's got to be a way to tie a tie with one hand. Come on.
I don't know. I haven't found it.
Sounds like an excuse.
Yeah, well, what I have to say about that actually is Allah will judge. And actually, I am saying that because in France, one of our favorite jihad sites for this show, we have, where is this place? Here it is. The church of, this is a church in Nice. The Basilica of Our Lady of the Assumption in Nice. Very nice church in Nice. And sorry, yes, ladies and gentlemen, guilty.
I thought of the same thing, to be fair, but I thought that is too dumb to say.
No, nothing's too dumb for me to say.
It's too lame of a
man.
joke, so I won't say it. And 10 seconds later, you say it.
I'm the guy who writes these poems. Come on. All right, so this guy goes into the church, the Basilica of Our Lady of the Assumption in Nice, throws water on the candles, and then throws water on the sacristan who was starting to walk toward him, starts to perform Islamic prayers, reciting verses from the Quran, and he shouted, Allah will judge. What do you think there, David? He was charged with, he was found to have psychological disorders.
It's weird. Any idea why these psychological disorders are so common in one particular religion?
Yeah, it's a funny thing, if they keep doing this and every jihadi has psychiatric disorders, then they're going to end up having to add to the DSM-5, or is it 6 now? They're going to have to keep on putting all the jihadis in mental hospitals.
Yeah, and you got a problem here because sudden onset jihad syndrome. Suppose you want to make that, but for some reason it increases. The more Muslims, the greater the percentage of Muslims in a population, the more this suddenly happens. And the idea of having a mental disorder is that you're somehow different from everyone else. What happens when there's just millions and millions and millions of people in an area who have that same disorder? How do you call it a disorder when it becomes normal? That's an issue. You're going to get to the point where you have to say, "Oh, the guys who aren't going out and messing with Christians or subjugating people, the ones who aren't doing that they're the ones with the mental disorder because everyone else is doing it."
And this is the thing, that these guys they're not going to be manifesting any signs of mental disorder. They just believe in Islam. How long are they going to be able to sustain this charade? David, this next thing I should have brought up at the time that we were talking about how Allah promises in the Quran that you will always win, that Allah will reward you in this world and the next. He will punish the disbelievers in this world and the next. These things are repeatedly said in the Quran. And yet, as you noted at the beginning of the broadcast, there's so much disconfirming evidence. Allah keeps allowing the Jews to defeat the jihadis. How can this be? And there is a gentleman who suffered this quite vividly this week. I guess you saw this guy.
Yeah, what a dork.
Yeah, I had to laugh. This is Nurali Emamali. Nurali Emamali from Tajikistan. And he is a judo Olympian who was fighting an Israeli, and he declined to shake the Israeli's hand and screamed Allahu Akbar. And then Nurali Emamali was unceremoniously thrown on his back and decisively defeated. Now you can say details, he beat the Israeli, but he got defeated later. And that is true, but the fact is, why would Allah abandon him after he had made such a public display of hatred for the enemies of Allah, the worst enemies of the believers, and affirmed that Allah is greater?
Yeah, by causing the scene with the Israeli, he basically got everyone's attention on him. Right now, everyone's paying attention to what this guy's doing, and then I can't go on, I'm injured.
He got beat. He got beat bad.
And injured, right? He didn't.
Yeah, I think his arm was broken.
Oh yeah, something. Yeah.
In the next match, actually, I think his arm. If you look at this picture, it looks as if his left arm is all out of shape there. So yeah.
But think about this. We would have never heard about this. We would have never heard about this if this guy weren't causing a scene against the Jews. And then what happens?
That's true. That's true. He brought it on himself. Now, why would Allah allow that to happen to the man? You gotta wonder. The Quran promises victory in this world and the next. There is no concept in Islam of why do the wicked prosper. That's a Jewish and Christian idea.
That's what I'm saying. It's when you're losing, it's because Allah's punishing you. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if guys have been paying attention, but Islam's taken a lot of heavy, serious losses, and you've got basically over a quarter of the world's population, and you keep getting crushed by a couple million Jews. It's like, what? So again, it's either you're just wrong, your religion is wrong, your prophet's wrong, or Allah is punishing you. Well, why are you running out trying to subjugate everyone else, kill everyone else, slaughter everyone else, kill the Jews and Israel when you're in the process of Allah punishing you for something? Why don't you figure out what Allah is punishing you and humiliating you for, and deal with that? Then you can figure out how you're going to subjugate the world. But as of right now, it looks. I mean, if you were a Muslim, you'd have to say you're under massive divine judgment from Allah. I wouldn't be attacking anyone until I figure that one out, because all you're going to do is lose.
Hmm.
You're just going to lose. In other words, if Allah's punishing Muslims at the Battle of Uhud, and if you were aware of that He's going to use this to punish you, you should probably not go and fight until you deal with the issue. Okay, so if you know right now Allah's punishing you because that's the only thing that makes sense in your religion, why are you going out and fighting when Allah's just going to punish you? He's going to use the fights to punish you more. What are you, stupid?
Well, yeah, that is the problem that we're dealing with. All right, we got Iran, and in Iran, there was a recent study made that showed that a lot of women are getting murdered by their husbands. And that between March 20th and June 21st, at least 35 women were murdered by their male relatives, overwhelmingly the case that was their husbands. That has nothing to do with Islam, right? That's just a strange statistic out of Iran.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the details, but I would guess that you have lots of women who are looking at the signs of the times, thinking, "Hey, we looks like we may be winning, and we have massive public support for changing the rules here, but maybe some of their husbands aren't on board."
Hmm. Yeah, and the story actually discusses. Let me get it back here. That there is still widespread tolerance for honor killings. Says honor killings can be carried out for as little as not wearing the mandatory hijab, bringing shame on the family. And so this is something that's directly attributed to that by Iran International, which is a dissident Iranian site that publicizes what's really going on in the Islamic Republic. In a similar vein, we had Austria. And in Austria, there was Ibrahima B. And he is 23 years old, unemployed, born in Guinea. And he now he lived in France for a while. And people think that, I thought this was interesting, that he became radicalized while he was in France. But anyway, he went back to Austria. He returned to Austria, where he had originally come from Guinea. And he wanted his girlfriend, Elsa, who was a native Austrian, to live as a faithful Muslim. But she did not want to. He excuse me, forced her to wear a headscarf. He would check her phone, track her down. And when she was not wearing the headscarf, he started to hit her. He broke her nose at one point, and he said to her, "You will see what I will do to you. I will rip out your teeth. This is what will happen if you do not obey. No matter where you are, look, I will always be here, and even if it has been a year, I will destroy you. You may not even think of me anymore, but I will destroy you." Now, the funny thing about this story is that Ibrahim Abi is a guardian of morals. He's a Sharia cop.
That's perfect. That's perfect for Sharia cop. If you were saying great for regular cop, that would be no. He's the opposite of that. But for Sharia cop, guy's on the ball.
Exactly.
That's a gold standard of Sharia cop right there.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I got this out of Heute, which is a German language paper in Austria today.
Means today.
I just said it today.
But I didn't know if you were just saying today was the article.
by a remarkable coincidence. Yes. Anyway, Austria, it seems like they were thinking that it is that it was paradoxical that the guy is a guardian of public morals.
Oh yeah, shocker.
Yeah. And
Oh,
so
isn't it
I
weird that the guardian of public morals would want this woman to completely obey him? Now, in their defense, Robert, in their defense, it's not like Islam has ever given us the impression that it has a problem with disobedient women before. So this would just be like the first case. So they had no way of knowing this.
yeah, first case ever. We've never heard of any of this kind of thing. Never ever. All right. Oh yeah, let's check in with our friends here that we talked about a couple weeks ago. The Ahmadi religion of peace and light. And there they are. That might be all of them. I'm not sure, but there aren't very many. But the Ahmadi religion of peace and light should be not to be confused with the Ahmadiyya. These are not the Ahmadi Muslims out of Pakistan and Indonesia. This is a group out of Egypt that is a relatively new sect arising out of Shiite Islam, where all the very interesting sects arise out of. And they believe in some fellow who's still alive, I think, as some sort of messiah or prophet figure. And so they were kicked out of Egypt. They were persecuted in Egypt. They fled Egypt, I should say. Not formally kicked out, but life was made so difficult for them. And so they went to Turkey. And now, to their shock, they are being persecuted in Turkey. And they're not being allowed to buy property. They're getting a lot of runaround about whether they can settle there. And they've had to, scatter to 18 different Turkish cities within 15 days without any housing support. And their residence permits are about to be revoked. Yeah, they're not going to last in Turkey.
We all know what happens here, Robert. Fast forward a couple of years. We have to go to a Western nation. And then when we're in this Western nation, which protects us from the Muslims who want to subjugate or kill us, then we'll go around in that Western nation and lecture everyone on how peaceful and tolerant Islam is. It's the same thing the Ahmadis did. Their headquarters is now in the UK, Robert. The regular Ahmadis, their headquarters is now in the UK. It's in the UK because they know they're much safer there. And these are the guys who will come lecture us saying, hey, stop saying Islam is violent. Stop saying it.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. They're incredible. They're supposed to be love for all and hatred for none and all that. And
they'll change that real quick.
Incredibly hateful, arrogant people. But they don't teach violent jihad, so hooray.
Yep.
I guess.
They just attack people who point out the jihad problem.
Yeah. And the thing is that it should be noted, since a lot of people get taken in by the Ahmadis, that it should be noted that they don't believe in peace because they don't want Sharia. They want peaceful coexistence. They want Sharia. They just want to go about it a different way. And they also don't read the Quran in some radically different way from the rest of the Muslims. They have this kind of a semi-prophet, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad from the 19th century, who had all these teachings of his own, and that's why they teach peace, because he did. But it's not as if they represent some actual genuine interpretation of Islam that's peaceful. Anyway, this is Christian Naif. And he is a reporter for Der Spiegel in Germany. And of course, the Spiegel is a very far left publication that is vehemently in favor of the mass migration of Muslims into Germany. And so Christian Naif was in the news because he was this past week punched in the face by a migrant from Syria. Even though he is a champion, staunch champion of mass migration. It's
going to happen to a better person.
Yeah, you gotta wonder. Sometimes there's poetic justice. But for the most part, we still have in Europe, not only do we have people actively aiding and abetting, but like Kamala Harris, they say that you can't talk about it. And so there was a recent case just a few days ago, David. There were 7 people who were arrested in Belgium. And the Reuters report says 7 people were detained in Belgium on Thursday on suspicion of terrorism after police raided houses. and they remain in custody on Friday. Police raided houses all over Belgium. It was a very large-scale attack. The federal prosecutor's office said that these 7 guys were suspected of participating in the activities of a terrorist group, of financing terrorism and preparing a terrorist attack. And even though the spokesman Arnaud Doutremont, he said that investigators have not yet identified the suspect's concrete objectives, at the same time, the French Interior Minister, Gerald Darmanin, he says, I thank our Belgian friends who today led a judicial operation to protect us, which makes it very likely that these guys were targeting the Paris Olympics. And yet, conspicuously absent from all the stories I was able to find, Reuters, AP, and any others, nobody said what kind of terrorists these guys were. But we know that ISIS and Al-Qaeda have... No, I'm sorry. ISIS and Hamas have both called for jihad attacks against the Paris Olympics. And here we have 7 people in Belgium arrested for a terror plot, and the French Interior Minister thanks the Belgians for saving them from this terror plot. Seems very likely, not certain to be sure, but likely that it is... regarding the Olympics. Most likely, I would say, going out on a limb here, these guys were jihadis, but nobody in the press wants to say it. And so I think, how are you going to be able to prepare your people to resist this when you can't even talk about what it is?
Mm-hmm. That's that thing with Kamala, where Kamala's going. You can't say anything about it. You can't name it. You don't know which words to use.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll somehow make the problem go away.
I just don't know how it's going to work. I don't know what they think is going to come of all this. Anyway, here's another one where I don't know what they think is going to come of all this. But anyway, Montreal City Hall in Quebec. For years, Montreal City Hall had a crucifix because it was a Christian area. And they were very open about that, proud of that. They don't have the First Amendment about non-establishment of religion and so on, so they had a crucifix in the City Hall. Nobody thought anything twice about it, but not long, 5 years ago, the crucifix was removed. And now in the space where the crucifix was, there is a mural. And the mural says, Bienvenue, welcome to, I guess, the City Hall of Montreal. But anyway, or welcome to whatever, welcome to the city. And the prominently featured, of course, on this mural is a woman with a hijab. So they took down the crucifix, they put up a hijab. Where are we going with this, David? Where's this going?
It's the same direction like KFC Canada is going, right? That for the sake of diversity, we need to become Islamic supremacists. For the sake of diversity and inclusivity, we have to make everything Islamic.
Yeah, that's it.
The least inclusive ideology in the world.
So I thought this was interesting to wrap up today, David. We got our friend Tariq Asuedan, who is always good for some incendiary comments. He is a Muslim Brotherhood leader, and I got his picture here somewhere. I know it. I thought I did. I don't know how you keep all this stuff straight, you guys that do this all the time. Anyway, it was here. The Jews came and stole it.
You see? You see? We kept talking about Muslims losing everything, and here you are. You were delayed for several seconds. You see?
There it is. All right, we got Tariq Asuedan. It's very interesting, David, because he says this. What happened on October 7th? Some people who have no understanding, excuse me for being bold, think that October 7th was a catastrophe for us. Right? I swear by Allah, the magnitude of October 7th is no less than what happened in 1967. It awakened the Islamic nation once again. True, there was a lot of pain in 1967. Defeat, humiliation, the loss of Jerusalem, but the
Yeah.
outcome was very beneficial for the Islamic nation.
What, more
October
whining?
October 7th. Okay, it is a one-day victory followed by pain, destruction, and genocide, but it will change history.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to changing the course of history. Now you guys are winning, boy. You're just doing a bang up job.
Well, you
You're
see
you're
where he's
you're
going
nailing
with
it.
this. You see this in the picture? And where he's going with this, he says,
Mm-hmm.
Allah has promised us that we would fight the Jews until they hide behind the rocks and trees, and that we would be the east to the river and they to the west. Also, there's another promise by Allah that is verified. The Prophet's companions did not doubt it, so beware of doubting it yourselves. The Prophet Muhammad said, Judgment Day will not come before Allah allows you to conquer Constantinople and Rome. We are talking about the real Rome in Italy. Well, he's saying that the Jews are going to be hiding behind trees. The trees will cry out, "O Muslim, there's a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill him." And the Muslims will conquer Rome.
Yeah, I think they need to. We need to come up with an updated version of these hadiths that makes more sense. Muhammad should have said, "The hour will not come. The hour will not come until the Muslims fight against the Jews, and the Jews are hiding behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees cry out, Muslims, do not mess with these guys. They've got way superior technology, and they are going to crush you. Just leave them alone. Leave them alone behind the rock and tree. Do not go. Don't go back there. Don't go back. Don't go back. Now you're dead. Look at what just happened. We warned you. We literally warned you. Something like that.
Yeah, but then they would just say, "Don't trust those rocks and trees. Trust the other rocks and trees." All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's This Week in Jihad for this week. There will unfortunately be more jihad, and we will be back, because where there is jihad, there is us. Until then, pray, hope, and don't worry.